If you have this on your tooth, it's actually a big deal. This is what we call an abfraction, and a lot of people have this on their tooth right about where the gum line is, and they usually ignore it. They usually think it's not really a big deal because it doesn't hurt them, it doesn't bother them. When they brush and floss, they kind of don't even realize it's there. If you ignore this, you're actually ignoring the problem of why you have these on your teeth. Just having these little divots on your teeth is actually not a big deal. You can just fill them, but knowing why you have them could lead to a deeper issue, which a lot of dentists realize is a malocclusion problem. Now, malocclusion is just a word for your bite being off, or your bite not biting correctly, or biting on one side versus the other and having an imbalance. Now, when you have an imbalance in your bite and or you're biting too much on one tooth, your teeth are going to give way, and when they give way, they're gonna have these little divots in the side of the tooth. Now, when you look at a tooth, you would think that the weak point of the tooth might be the root, might be the top of the tooth. You think your tooth would actually chip. Now, if your tooth is having too much pressure on it, you would break, but a lot of times they don't. One sign that you have too much pressure on this tooth is getting these little divots or these little abfraction marks. Now, an abfraction in itself isn't a big deal, but when you have these, most patients don't have any sensitivity, and most patients don't even know you're there. You can brush, floss, put cold water on here. You're not gonna have any symptoms on them whatsoever. It's actually not a huge deal. Until this eats into the tooth, basically like a beaver eating into a tree, it's just gonna keep going in and in and in until it gets into the nerve, and then it is actually gonna cause a big deal because you're gonna need a root canal, build up crown. It's going to be a very expensive fix. And like some of these patients that have them on a lot of their teeth, they're gonna have to get them all fixed all at once. So if you have this on your tooth, it's very, very important. Coming from a dentist, I see this all the time on patients, and I tell them, we need to address this divot or this abfraction with the filling, but also look at why you're getting this. Because if you don't, it's just going to be a lifetime of putting a filling in, that filling pops out, having this go in more, and having other problems associated with the underlying cause, which is malocclusion. Now look, when a dentist does your exam, they're gonna go in there and they're going to examine all the teeth, and we have so many things that we're looking at as a dentist. We have cavities, we're reading these x-rays, we're looking for abnormalities, margins of crowns, we're looking for cavities underneath crowns, underneath fillings, looking at your dental insurance, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot on our mind. So a lot of times this gets overlooked. And when I was younger as a dentist, I had no idea that this was such a big issue until I got older and I realized it's not actually our fault that we didn't realize this was a big deal. Look, in dental school, they have so much to teach you. They basically want to teach you the fundamentals, teach you the basics, and get you past your dental boards, get you out of the door so they can get the next class in. So a lot of us don't know this. When I was younger, I had no idea. They never taught me any of this information in school, but now I know. And when I see a patient with this amount of abfractions on their teeth, large abfractions, multiple abfractions, it leads me to a different conversation of your bite is probably off. Let's do something like a bite scan and analyze it to see if your bite needs adjustment or needs to do something like Invisalign or do braces. Fixing the bite is another issue, and the number one tool that we have as dentists to fix your bite is called a bite scan. So there's lots of different intraoral cameras or digital scanners that are on the market, and we like to use these more and more and more. I just implemented 2 of these in my office now because I just love using them. Scanning a patient can tell you so much information about their bite, malocclusion, and actually predict future dental problems that are gonna happen just based on your bite scan. So let's take a look at this patient's bite, for example. This patient has a couple of things. Like at first, it looks like maybe a couple of their teeth are crooked, a couple of their teeth are misaligned, and you can tell that from the outside, but functionally on the inside, one thing I don't like is these red marks are not even. You wanna see heavy red marks on the molar areas, a little bit less on the premolars, maybe some heavy marks on the canines, because canines have an extremely long root, and that long root is made for pressure on the tooth. It's kind of an intermediate tooth. It's not a Now, what I don't like about this patient is that they are biting on their front tooth. Now, biting on your front teeth is generally, we want to stay away from that, and it is not ideal. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world in the immediate future, but in the long term, it is something you want to correct, because I don't want to see any red, and you can see that clearly that this top tooth and this bottom tooth are actually biting each other. So now this patient knows all this information, their bite is off, what do they do about it? This would be a perfect Invisalign case, a perfect clear aligners case where we can straighten their teeth and get your bite ideal, get those lower teeth corrected so that they look nice and straight, and actually get that bite in so they're not biting on their lower front tooth. So this is a model of somebody's teeth that have been ground down. And one thing you can notice is that the top and the bottom teeth fit together like a puzzle, which is something that I look for on exams every time I do an exam on a patient, as I look to see if their top teeth and their bottom teeth are actually meshing up with each other. If they are perfectly flat and you bite, your top and bottom front teeth are actually hitting each other and they're perfectly flat, maybe similar to this patient, that is not a good sign. That means not only your bite is off, but also that your teeth are grinding on each other, which is not sustainable. We need to do a night guard, we need to do Invisalign, braces to get that bite fixed. Because what happens is you bite and you grind and you bite and you grind, and then the relation between your top jaw and your lower jaw actually gets compressed over time to the point where your teeth are so ground down, now you have jaw problems because your jaw on the upper and lower is this wide. And as you get older and grind down your teeth, now it is this wide, and your teeth you can't open very wide because you have all these problems, and that requires a full mouth rehab. Now that is a $40,000 to $80,000 procedure nobody wants to do, nobody wants to go through or pay for. So looking at the bite early is actually going to prevent you from a lot of future problems that you have. Another thing I look for on exams is chipped teeth. If you have a lower front tooth that's chipped, that means that you're already starting to have problems with it. Back teeth that are really worn is fairly normal, but the front teeth are meant for looks. They're not really meant for biting. So we see a lot of that on exams, which leads me to a further discussion of, hey, let's do a bite scan and see why this is happening. Also, on a side note, patients ask me this all the time, hey, can I just put a filling in this tooth? The answer is yes, we can put a filling, but that filling is going to pop out. It's not gonna stay in there, because when you have a problem with a bite and a tooth is chipped and we put a filling on there, there's really nothing for that filling to hold on to. And patients get really upset when we charge them for an expensive filling and it pops out in 2 to 3 months. It's because the problem is the bite. It's not actually a problem with the filling or anything that the dentist did. So when I was younger, I used to do a lot of these, and now that I'm a little bit older as a dentist, I don't actually like to do these types of fillings because I don't like charging patients for things that aren't going to work. And knowing that it's an easy fix, but it's very, very short term, I generally shy away from them. If I can fix the bite, then I can fix the filling, but I generally don't like fixing the filling knowing that I charge a patient for something and then in a few weeks or a few months later, it just pops out and I have to redo it again. And lastly, let me show you an example of a very ideal bite. This is a computer simulation of an ideal bite, right? The teeth are perfectly straight. On the outside, everybody sees that. What I like as a dentist is they're not biting on their lower front teeth. All 4 front teeth on the lower ones and the upper ones are actually have a lot of space, so they couldn't actually physically bite it. So if the patient actually wanted to bite on these, they couldn't physically do it because there is a space and there is a gap. This is good information to talk to your doctors. If you have any questions about this, leave a comment below. I can answer generalized questions, but I cannot answer specific questions to you or diagnose your teeth, because after all, I'm just a after all, I'm not your general dentist. After all, I can't fix everybody's teeth via the internet or YouTube. I'm just a dentist trying to teach you about stuff so that you can have those educated talks with your doctor. And you can actually improve your dental IQ, which is kind of another word for knowledge about teeth. Thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.